I knew something was off the second my mother called me from the floor. She'd fallen again, bathroom tile, weak ankle, same old story, and I was 3 clicks away from closing a $1 million rollout plan while microwaving her lunch and talking a junior analyst through a panic attack over Slack. All from my kitchen counter, in pajama pants and a blazer. That was my life. Chaos, managed with surgical grace and a half-charged AirPod. I was the kind of employee that kept a creaking company, like Hensley and Gray, from toppling over, quietly, invisibly, like a human duct tape miracle. I led cross-department projects spanning 3 time zones, onboarded new clients faster than the sales team could say discovery call, and rewrote entire frameworks in my head during spin classes. I didn't need an office. I was the office. If I had a title, it should have been vice president of holding this entire shitshow together with coffee and spite. And just real quick, before we go any deeper, 97% of folks listen to stories like this and don't hit that subscribe button. Wild, right? If this already smells like corporate betrayal stew brewing on the back burner, smash that like, toss a follow. Help fuel the team that brings you these spicy tales of executive incompetence and poetic revenge. Seriously, it means the world to us. Anyway, my life was a spreadsheet of balance. Remote work let me be there for mom without sacrificing a single client deadline. I had a whole rhythm. I'd finish a Zoom call mute, refill her tea, then jump back just in time to catch some smug VP misusing the term agile. Efficiency was my oxygen. My higher-ups, they acted like I was some magical elf who kept everything functioning, but they never once asked how I managed it. They didn't care. As long as OmniCorp kept renewing contracts and the dashboards looked pretty for quarterly reviews, I could have been working from the moon. And speaking of OmniCorp, God, that vendor made our whole operation tick. We had some janky internal systems patched together like Frankenstein's armpit. OmniCorp's logistics backend kept our biggest clients satisfied. I'd spent years smoothing that relationship like a damn diplomat, dodging late reports, reformatting awful exports, catching catastrophic errors before they reached legal. I had their mid-tier folks in my favorites list and knew which ones preferred email vs Slack DMs. They loved me, said I was the only reason they hadn't set our contract on fire. But my company, Hensley and Gray, ever seen a camel try to square dance? That's how they handled tech. They still fax things. I'm not kidding, actual faxes. They had an IT strategy session last year where the CIO earnestly suggested we explore QR codes, like we just invented them. The CEO, Rick, God help him, still printed out his emails and had his assistant read them aloud in meetings. If I ever sent him a Google Doc, he'd ask me how to open the blue E. But I stayed. Why? Because it worked. I knew where every weak spot was, who to nudge, when to escalate without making a VP feel emasculated. I knew that if OmniCorp's weekly data dump didn't go through by Thursday noon, the claims team would melt down. I knew the calendar habits of every exec and could sense brewing disaster like a bloodhound for bullshit. I made it look easy. That was my crime. So when that email hit, important, transitioning back to in-person excellence, I laughed so hard I nearly spilled soup on my dog. Excellence. That's what they called it. Said remote work was diluting our core culture and sapping in-person innovation. Said starting next month, every salaried employee would return to the office. Full-time, non-negotiable, no exceptions. And just like that, my entire existence was scheduled for demolition by a man who once asked if Slack was a new intern. Email hit like a brick through a stained glass window. Subject line, reigniting synergy, the path back to office culture. I'd seen less forced optimism in a cult recruitment flyer. It started with Dear Team, which already told me we were about to be patronized. Then came a paragraph about embracing post-pandemic clarity, whatever the hell that meant, and some mangled quote from Steve Jobs about innovation not happening on Zoom. I swear, halfway through the second paragraph, I could hear Rick's voice in my head, smug, nasal, Midwestern, with a sprinkle of dumb, talking about hallway collisions like they were Nobel Prize moments. Then, the line that made my heart drop into my socks. Effective June 1st, all salaried team members will be expected to return to their designated office locations on a full-time basis. Expected. Like it was a field trip. We were just going to stroll back into that hellscape of flickering fluorescent lights, stale birthday cake in the break room, and Barry from finance reheating tuna in the communal microwave. They threw in a paragraph pretending they'd done research. After months of careful analysis and leadership summits, yeah, summits held on golf courses, I'm sure, we believe in-person collaboration is essential for long-term growth. No mention of the productivity reports they themselves published, praising remote performance. No data, just beliefs. Then came the dagger. There will be no exceptions or hybrid accommodations. They bolded that part. I stared at the screen so long the Outlook blue started to blur. My inbox pinged again, then again. Slack lit up like a Vegas slot machine. Every team thread I was in exploded with panicked typing. Kelly, UX lead, what the actual hell is this? Just hit record client engagement, Ron, front-end dev. They can't do this, right? I moved to Utah, Maya, support manager. I literally don't have childcare in the city anymore, Zach, new intern. Wait, do we have to buy pants? It was the digital equivalent of a company-wide primal scream. In our private team DM, where real conversations happened, people were already whispering about who would quit, who couldn't comply, would try to fake commute stats. Everyone had their own personal cliff's edge, and we were all being asked to swan dive off it with a smile and a LinkedIn post about embracing change. Me, my stomach nodded. My mom had just started her new meds, strong stuff, made her dizzy, confused. She needed someone around. Not full-time, but consistently. And now this company, where I had bent over backward to prove remote worked, was pretending we'd all just been on vacation. Like the last 2 years of 12-hour days, midnight fire drills and client saves from my goddamn kitchen table didn't count. I tried to breathe, but something in my chest was twisting. Not just dread, rage, because I saw what this was, a flex. A power grab by execs who missed seeing their little empires in person. Guys like Rick, who couldn't stand not being saluted in the hallway. This wasn't about productivity. This was about control. And control, I could tell you, was the first thing I felt slipping from my grip. The video call was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. By 9:03, I already knew I was screwed. It was me, my manager Lauren, tight bun, tighter smile, and some HR mannequin named Darren, who looked like he practiced empathy in the mirror and still couldn't get it right. They started with small talk. We weren't about to discuss the destruction of my livelihood. Hey, Janet. Hope your week's off to a great start. Hey, Darren. Janet's been with us forever, right? Sure has, he said, flipping through what I assumed was my personnel file, like he was reviewing a discontinued appliance manual. Lauren launched into her script like she was trying to win a high school debate. We're really excited about the renewed energy this office initiative will bring to the team culture. That said, we did want to check in, just to make sure you're aligned with leadership's direction. Aligned, I said, raising an eyebrow. I assume that's code for you're either at a cubicle or out on the curb. They both laughed politely. I laid it out calmly, too calmly. I've led 15 successful cross-department initiatives, kept client churn at record lows, and managed our largest account remotely. All while being a full-time caregiver. Physically cannot return to the office 5 days a week. But I'm happy to discuss alternatives, hybrid, adjusted hours, contractor status, whatever makes sense. Lauren glanced at Darren. Darren gave a little HR nod. Unfortunately, leadership has made it clear that flexibility is no longer part of the company structure. Exceptions create inconsistencies. Inconsistencies reduce morale. Right. Because morale is so high now, I snapped. That's when Darren pulled out the blade he'd been polishing under the table. Given the circumstances, we understand if you feel this role no longer aligns with your lifestyle. If you'd like to voluntarily resign, we can process that today and offer a reference letter. I stared at them both. It was so clean, so efficient, like deleting a spreadsheet row. So I either abandon the person I take care of every day. I voluntarily resign from a job I've excelled at for 7 years. We understand this is a tough choice, Lauren said. And I swear to God, she tilted her head like a golden retriever trying to solve a math problem. I wanted to scream or throw something. Instead, I smiled. Okay, I said, then I guess I'm resigning. They brightened. Darren typed something. Lauren thanked me for my professionalism. And just like that, I was gone. No severance. No exit interview. No plaque, party, or LinkedIn post. I was erased like I'd never held that entire department together with duct tape, triple lattes, and an iron will. I closed my laptop, sat back in my chair, and felt the quiet bloom around me like a bomb had just gone off. It wasn't sadness. Not yet. It was a cold, surgical betrayal that burned clean through my chest. But under that, something darker. Heavier, not grief, not even anger. Blueprints. I woke up the next morning at 6:42 a.m., like my body hadn't gotten the memo that I'd been forcibly unemployed. No Slack pings, no meetings, no emergency emails flagged urgent by someone who didn't know how to attach a PDF. Just silence, and the sound of my mother humming off-key from the kitchen as she microwaved oatmeal she always forgot to stir. I sat at the table, staring into a coffee cup that tasted like defeat, wearing the same hoodie I wore the day they let me go. But under the fog, under the disorientation, something was beginning to pulse. Something mean, something alive. I didn't open LinkedIn. I didn't update my resume. I didn't schedule a single informational coffee chat. Screw that. Instead, I opened a fresh Google Doc. Title: Weak Points in H and GTK's OmniCorp Integration Exploit List. Not subtle, not polite, not remotely legal advice friendly. Oh, it felt right. I started typing. The notes poured out faster than I could think. OmniCorp hates H and GTK's current interface. Says it feels like doing surgery with salad tongs. Weekly file transfers are inconsistent. I've had to fix 3 critical data formatting errors this month alone. OmniCorp's mid-tier PMs constantly complain about slow approvals, no visibility, and repeated duplicate requests. OmniCorp once sent a 2-paragraph list of feature requests. H&G ignored them entirely. I implemented 60% of them manually, just to keep them happy. Every bullet point sharpened into a nail I could hammer into my old company's coffin. See, Hensley and Gray treated OmniCorp like a tool, not a partner. And they treated me like a buffer, something soft between them and real frustration. But now that buffer was gone. Complaints I used to patch over were about to turn into craters. And here's the beautiful part. I knew exactly what OmniCorp wanted. A simple, transparent system with automation, shared dashboards, instant approval workflows, and integration with the crap tools they were forced to use. Not rocket science. Just thoughtful execution. It didn't exist because companies like H&G don't build for usability. They build for control, for bloated, proprietary nonsense designed to lock in contracts and confuse clients into silence. But I had no such loyalties. No boss breathing down my neck. No deadweight departments dragging every decision into 3 weeks of cross-functional review. So I made a decision. That day, that hour. If they were going to fire me for refusing to play office politics, I'd build the very thing they were too dumb and prideful to create, use it to pry their most important relationship out from under them like a rotten floorboard. Not for revenge, not entirely, for proof that I mattered, that I'd always mattered, that you don't just delete someone who understands the machine better than the people who built it. The startup wasn't a dream. It was a blade, and I'd just found the handle. By day 3 of fun employment, my dining table looked like a hacker bunker designed by a Pinterest mom. Sticky notes, wireframes, 2 empty Red Bull cans doing battle with a scented candle that said calm vibes. Ironic, since I hadn't felt calm since Darren's smug HR smile. I registered an LLC that afternoon, called it Vanta Bridge Solutions, vague enough to sound expensive, clean enough to fit on a slide deck. Burned through $4,300 of savings like it was Monopoly money. Domain, hosting, a Notion board so stacked it could have run NASA. I opened VS Code and went feral. I wasn't building some bloated Frankenstein like the systems they used at H&G. This was lean, sharp, and personal. A real-time dashboard that updated client requests, showed file status, flagged inconsistencies, auto-pinged approvals, and my favorite part, kept a time-stamped, searchable log of every interaction. No more "I never got that" or "Oh, did you see me?" Bullshit dies in daylight. By the 5th night, had a functioning MVP. Ugly, fast, functional. No styling yet, no mobile view, but it worked. And then I pulled up my old texts. Malik OmniCorp Ops, Midwest Division. Smart, underpaid, overworked. I talked him off 3 different ledges over the years when H and GTK's export files came in malformed or the approvals sat untouched for days. He once called our backend a spaghetti mess coated by toddlers high on glue sticks. He had history, so I sent him a message. Hey Malik, wild timing. I'm building a tool that fixes half the crap we used to complain about. Want to beta test it for free? I owe you like 6 venti cold brews worth of sanity. 3 dots, pause, you got laid off. WTF? Also yes, immediately yes. We had 2 approval loops break again this week. This place is a circus. I sent him the login. He was in before I could refresh the admin panel. Malik used the trial like a man who'd found plumbing after years of hauling buckets. I watched the analytics light up like a slot machine. 5 tasks created, 3 approvals, 2 sync spreadsheets, all in one evening. He messaged again, "Dude, this is cleaner than the garbage we pay for. How fast can you scale?" That night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, though God, there was plenty of that. My rent didn't care how noble my grudge was. There was something else stirring under my skin. I was in the game. The trial was my bait, just one dangling line. And if Malik bit hard enough, the ripple would hit the rest of OmniCorp's team. If they saw what he saw, they'd start asking questions. Like why their current setup made everything harder. Like why they'd tolerated H and GTK nonsense for so long. And maybe, just maybe, by the time those questions reached the executive floor, I'd already have the answer waiting on a custom domain. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was proof of concept, and I was about to prove just how badly they'd miscalculated. By the end of the first week, Malik had turned my free trial into an underground movement. He invited 3 more managers to test the platform, and by Monday morning, I had 6 active users and a backlog of enthusiastic feedback disguised as bug reports. Weren't just tolerating the tool, they were bragging about it in internal Slack channels, sending me screenshots of praise from their own VPs with messages like, "Tell me your girl, Janet didn't just make our ops team obsolete." That's when I knew it was time to go for the jugular. I polished the UI just enough to pass as enterprise-ready, clean white space, collapsible modules, color-coded flags. Nothing fancy. Just deadly efficiency. I drafted the pitch deck with the kind of restrained venom that makes execs think you're doing them a favor. Slide 1. OmniCorp's current workflow, broken, bloated, slow. Slide 2. My solution live preview of the dashboard. Slide 3. Time saved per task, 47%. Slide 4. Annual cost savings, low 6 figures. Slide 5. Bonus, no middlemen, no bloat, no waiting 3 days for a PDF approval. I titled it, Precision over Process. The Future of Vendor Collaboration. Malik forwarded it straight to his director. Within 48 hours, I had a calendar invite labeled Demo W/OmniCorp Exec Ops Thursday 1 p.m. EST. No matter how much you rehearse, nothing prepares you for watching 5 stone-faced executives stare into your soul while you pitch the thing you bled into for 2 weeks straight. Click through slides with the calm of someone who's already seen the building burn down and is now just handing out marshmallows. "And here's your current workflow," I said, pulling up a visual comparison. 9 steps, 4 redundant approvals, an average turnaround of 3.2 days. Click, my platform, 3 steps, all trackable, live syncing. Average turnaround under 12 hours. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds. Then a guy named Lewis, VP of Ops, I'd heard about him, leaned back and said, "Well, that makes our current vendor look like a typewriter trying to do calculus." I smiled. "You said that. I didn't. They said they'd get back to me soon." Soon turned out to be 23 hours and 11 minutes later. I got the call at 2:47 p.m. Malik was already vibrating through the phone. "They loved it," he said. Like, high-level loved it. "They're cutting the cord with H and G, deal memos being written now. Eagle just needs to run the numbers. You're about to be our new official vendor." I sat on the floor next to a pile of unfolded laundry and a crusty cereal bowl and laughed so hard I scared the dog. I hadn't just survived. I hadn't just competed. I'd stolen their lifeline. OmniCorp was their primary vendor pipeline, the artery that fed 2/3 of H and GTK's Q4 projections. And now that artery belonged to me. For a moment, I felt a sick, shimmering kind of euphoria. Like I was standing on a cliff with the wind in my hair, screaming into the void, only to hear the void scream back, "Hell yes." Then the second wave hit. The weight of what I'd just done. This wasn't a test run anymore. This wasn't theoretical revenge. I'd lit the match. Now I was watching the fuse burn, and it was heading straight for the gas line. It started with a ping from Maya, my old support manager. Never texted outside work unless someone died or the office ran out of coffee pods. "Janet, what did you do?" I blinked. Then the call started. Ron from front-end, breathless, said the executive suite was in DEFCON mode. Someone had stormed out of a meeting. Someone else cried. Apparently, Rick's face turned a shade of red not listed in the Crayola catalog. "OmniCorp's out," Ron said. "They pulled the plug. No warning. Just gone." Screaming about sabotage. He said your name twice and threw a sandwich at the wall. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. Then Meyer again. They just told the whole CX team to do a rapid client retention sweep. Half the floor thinks we're about to get sold. You broke them. By the end of the day, I had 5 voicemails from people who once avoided eye contact in the break room, now treating me like I'd walked on water. One even ended with, "Honestly, if you start hiring, hit me up." I felt untouchable, like I'd just body snatched my old life and made it beg for mercy. But the high only lasted a day. The letter came in an email with the subject line, "Cease and desist, immediate attention required." It was from a boutique law firm I vaguely remembered from my HR onboarding packet, the same ones who drafted that predatory social media behavior clause that banned employees from posting memes about work. The letter was 5 pages of corporate throat clearing, wrapped around one very pointed claim. I had violated my non-compete clause by forming a directly competitive entity and soliciting a current client. They wanted me to cease operations, terminate the contract with OmniCorp, disclose all proprietary information obtained during my employment. I stared at the screen, heart jackhammering, palms slick. For a split second, I saw it all unravel, savings gone, court fees mounting, OmniCorp yanking the deal to avoid trouble. But then I read the clause again. Slowly, it was vague, sloppy, written for some boilerplate sales role, not someone like me. It barred working for direct competitors, not founding a new firm, mentioned client lists, not software. It had no territorial limitation, no specificity, and most importantly, it didn't say a damn word about post-termination consulting or vendor transitions initiated by the client. They weren't suing, they were bluffing, trying to scare me, control me, the same way they always had. But this wasn't a Zoom call with Lauren and Darren anymore. This was war. I was no longer answering to anyone who signed their emails warmly, management. The email came in at 11:47 p.m., tucked between a DoorDash receipt and a Stripe notification. No subject line, just, "I think we should talk. Call me, Charles Emery." I stared at the name like it was a ghost. Charles Emery, board member, silent partner. The guy who only showed up in press releases and annual reports, always flanked by words like legacy and strategic oversight. I'd seen his face once on a Zoom call. Frozen mid-blink, said nothing the entire meeting. Now he was emailing me. I hesitated for maybe 5 seconds before calling. He picked up on the second ring, voice low and even like a surgeon about to deliver a prognosis with no time for small talk. "Janet," he said, "you built the dashboard, didn't you? No introductions. No legalese, just straight into the heart of it." "Yes," I said. He exhaled like that confirmed something for him. "Good," I suspected. I told them they were pushing talent out the door, that the return to office campaign was going to cost us more than morale. Rick didn't care. He wanted butts in chairs regardless of output. He said remote was making people soft. I blinked. He fired me over Zoom. That actually got a laugh out of him. A dry, weary one. Of course he did. He got quiet and dropped the bomb. Hensley and Gray is in trouble. OmniCorp was their operational spine. Without that contract, projected Q4 revenue collapses. Our debt obligations tighten. There are already whispers of liquidation plans, just in case. I sat down hard. "And the cease and desist?" I asked. "Bluff," Charles said immediately. "That clause wasn't designed for a scenario like this. You weren't a direct sales competitor. We're operations and internal systems. They're trying to scare you into folding so they can salvage the relationship with OmniCorp before the board starts asking the real questions." "You are the board," I said. He chuckled again. "I'm one vote, but I've been pushing back against Rick for over a year. He ignores data, fires dissent. You were a casualty of ego, not strategy." I let that sit. It made sense now, the chaos, the sandwich throwing, the legal bluster. Rick wasn't trying to protect the company. He was trying to protect himself. Charles continued, "You have leverage. Don't waste it. Keep OmniCorp happy and keep your head down. I'm going to raise some issues at the next meeting. Quietly, just don't do anything reckless." "Reckless," I said. "You mean like starting a company in 3 weeks and stealing your largest partner?" He paused. "Exactly like that. But between you and me, damn impressive." He hung up, sat there staring at the dark screen, a grin creeping across my face like sunlight through blinds. I wasn't rogue anymore. I wasn't just the bitter ex-employee screaming into the void. I had a voice on the inside, someone who saw what I saw, and now I had confirmation. They were bleeding, which meant I wasn't done yet. Not until I made damn sure Rick had to use my platform to schedule his own corporate funeral. 3 days after that midnight call, I got the ping, system notification from my platform. New organization created, H&G Board Services Plan, premium monthly plus secure add-ons. I stared at it, dumbfounded. For a second, I thought it was a prank, some cruel cosmic joke. But the billing info matched. The company email domain was right. Then I saw the meeting title. Emergency Session, CEO Performance and OmniCorp Contract Loss scheduled for Thursday, 4:00 p.m. EST. Host, Christy P. at Hensler Graycom. Christy, Rick's assistant. Sweet, painfully competent Christy, who once made me a spreadsheet color-coded by executive ego sensitivity. She was the one setting this up. She probably didn't even know whose tool she was using. She just Googled secure hybrid boardroom video platform, saw the glowing reviews, and clicked subscribe. I sat there, hand over my mouth, trembling. Not with fear, with absolute, feral satisfaction. I logged in at 3:59 p.m. just to watch it happen. I didn't enter the meeting, I had no need. I just opened the admin dashboard and clicked View Waiting Room. And there they were. Rick W. Lauren M. Darren, HR. Charles E. Investor Rep 1 at Private Equity Net Legal Counsel at Hensler Graycom, all of them. Sitting quietly in my virtual lobby like kids waiting outside the principal's office, faces frozen in those awful webcam thumbnail expressions, brows furrowed, mouths slightly open, unaware they were now paying a monthly fee to the woman they tried to erase. I could have clicked End Meeting right then and there. I could have locked them out, or renamed the meeting something poetic like Consequences, a masterclass. But I didn't. I just sat back, sipped my tea, and let the meeting begin. Let them squirm under fluorescent lights and financial forecasts. Let them argue over metrics they didn't understand. Let them fight over the scorched earth they'd created, all within my system. My architecture, my revenge. Somewhere between minutes 7 and 8, I saw Rick's name disappear. He dropped off or been kicked. Either way, the man who once said remote work made people lazy had just been logged out of his own leadership. No NDA, no severance, no fake smiles, just a dashboard, a title, and a list of names who finally had to reckon with the woman they thought they could discard. And as the screen faded to idle, I realized I didn't need applause or closure. Just one line etched permanently in the logs. Last session, hosted by Janet C., bridge burned, earth salted, peace achieved. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.